Welcome to the Dan Norton Show, in which I promote Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism, a philosophy of reason, egoism, and capitalism. It is Monday, August 3rd, 2026. This is the first show I've done in about a week or so. I did a debate review the last time I live streamed on YouTube, and I've been live streaming on TikTok a lot recently. And I actually did a live stream on TikTok earlier today, but I wanted to take a little break from that and do another live stream on YouTube. This is not like the last time where I had a assignment to get through. So last time I streamed on YouTube, someone had paid me, Objective Ethics, who was sometimes a participant in my chat here. He had paid me to review a debate he did. I don't have anything like that. I don't have a prepared topic that I want to get through. So this time I can engage more with the chat as I used to do normally, engage with chatters or callers. Hi, Jennifer. Jennifer is our first chatter of the day. I saw Jennifer in a recent chat when I was premiering one of my TikTok live streams. That was nice to engage with you some there. I've seen you many times in the chat of the Yaron Brooks show, as well as his AMA. Yeah, you got that smiley face there. So this is more of just a show where you all can bring topics that you want to discuss. I have many topics listed on my backgrounds to give you some ideas of things that you might want to talk about. I've got a bunch of topics sorted out into good and bad categories as I see them. Thank you for the hearts. See some hearts floating up. So I used to do live streams on YouTube every 5 days, and I did that for many months. And then a couple months ago, I started live streaming almost exclusively on TikTok. Why? Because I was getting a much larger audience over there, and I was able to reach more people. And I'm trying to spread the word here. So I've been spending more time over there, but I still want to continue on YouTube and continue growing my YouTube audience as well. And maybe eventually I will stream simultaneously on both platforms. But I think I might need to get 1,000 followers on TikTok before I can do that, just given their requirements. And I've currently got about 715 followers on TikTok, but it's growing much faster than on YouTube. Like, it's only taken me about 2 months to get those 700 or so, whereas it took me years to get that many on YouTube. So I don't know why, but it's much easier to get followers on TikTok. But I do value YouTube as well, and that's actually where I make most of my money from streaming. I do take super chats, so I encourage people, if they want to help me grow my stream, you can make a donation. Click on that $sign. I see we got Zelon K in the chat as well. I'll read your chats in a minute. I make a lot more money on YouTube, so that also encourages me to continue going on YouTube. I get more money here than I do on TikTok, at least for the time being. All right, so let me engage with some of these new chats. Zelon K says, I have a question. Like, how would you answer a counter that life gives the possibility of all other values isn't a sufficient reason for life being the ultimate value. Like movement is a necessary thing for value to be actualized through action, would it make sense then that movement be the ultimate value too? Well, where does the concept of value come from? Maybe that's a good way to approach this. I think we first get the concept of value from our experience of pleasure. Ayn Rand says something like this in her essay, The Objectivist Ethics. Our first grasp of the concept of value, good or value, is through our experience of pleasure. And happiness is our highest value for Rand, and happiness is it's a type of pleasure. There's different types of pleasure. There's physical pleasure or sensory pleasure, like you get from eating food, but there's also psychological pleasure, and that's a value, the highest value. So if something serves that end, happiness, then it is a subsidiary value. So if movement, you ask about movement, if just sitting still in a chair all day, not moving around, frustrates your ability to achieve happiness, then movement would be a disvalue. Sorry, lack of movement would be a disvalue. Whereas if moving helps you to achieve happiness, then it's a value in virtue of its contribution to your happiness. Now, Rand does talk about life being the standard of value, but her understanding of life is a robust sense of the term. It doesn't mean just bare physical survival, like if you're in a coma. That's not what she means when she says life is the standard of value. It's the life proper to a rational being. You might say flourishing life. And that includes happiness as well. Happiness is a crucial component of a flourishing life. So movements is only valuable if it contributes to this sort of flourishing, happy life, which Rand regards as the ultimate value. Okay, now you say, oh, okay, then that would make much more sense. But wouldn't that sneak in an assumption that pleasure is a good? This is like, I think, Michael Huemer's counter to Ayn Rand's metaethics. Well, I don't think it's right to say it's an assumption that pleasure is good. I think it just is good. We perceive it to be. I mean, what does good mean apart from something positive like pleasure? I think pleasure, goodness is baked into pleasure. I think. I mean, what would it mean to say something is good if it doesn't have any pleasure component at all to it? It doesn't really make sense to me. So I think it's just part of the nature of the concept good that it involves pleasure. Now it might not be physical pleasure in the moment, but as I said, there's other kinds of pleasures. There's psychological pleasure, and something can give you pleasure in the moment, like eating ice cream, but if you eat too much of it, it's going to cause you pain later. I mean, a stomach ache, perhaps. So it's not just momentary pleasure that matters, but it's some kind of pleasure that matters. And I can't make any sense out of saying that anything other than some kind of pleasure is good. Happiness, as I said, is a kind of pleasure. So I don't think it's just a arbitrary assumption. If that's what you're suggesting, I think it's just we goodness is sort of baked in to the nature of pleasure. That's what we mean by goodness, I think. That's where we get as Rand said, that's our first grasp of the concept good, is through the experience of pleasure. Now, there is an issue of whether plants have. Can something be good for a plant, like water or sunlight, if they can't experience pleasure? And I don't think they can. I don't think plants are conscious. So you might wonder, well, do plants really have values? I think there's a discussion of this somewhere in the objectivist literature. I don't know if it's in the published literature, but I think Rand addresses this issue of whether there are values for weeds. I think that was the phrase. And now you can say by the standard of life, things are good for the plant, like sunlight and water, and other things are bad, like lack of sunlight, lack of water. But at least in the case of conscious organisms, I don't think something is a value if it doesn't have any pleasure components, if it doesn't somehow contribute at all to a positive conscious experience. Thank you for answering. You're welcome. What are your views on animal ethics? Well, I don't think animals have rights. I think only human beings have rights. But I think it's immoral to torture animals. I don't think it should be illegal, but I do think people who do that are corrupt and should be shunned. So it's immoral, but I don't think it should be illegal because I don't think they have rights. Only human beings have rights, in my view. I don't know if that's the... Now, I'm not against using animals for food or clothing, but that's a different sort of proposition than torturing animals. So I'm not sure if that's the sort of thing you had in mind by asking about animal rights, but there are a few thoughts about that. All right, we got 8 people here. Welcome to the stream. First time I've done a live stream on YouTube in a while. Nice to be back. Get a little engagement here. Sometimes short-term pleasure can actually be destructive in the long run, says Jennifer. Yeah, that's right. I can share this chat on the screen. I got to refresh it though. Did that do it? Yeah. That did it. Okay. So what next? Anybody else want to raise a topic? Ask a question? Here's another one. Fair enough. I don't believe they have rights, but I also don't believe humans. You also don't believe humans have rights because you're a utilitarian. Okay. I'm an egoist, not a utilitarian. So I think what's good is what furthers your own self-interest, not what contributes to the greatest good of the greatest number, as utilitarianism would say. I don't see a reason to subordinate yourself to others. And I do think everyone actually is better off if everyone is an egoist. I think if you're pursuing your self-interest, you make yourself into a better person than if you are not pursuing your self-interest. You have more to offer others if you make yourself into a good person. Not that that's the point of it. I don't think I don't think the point of one's existence should be to make yourself be able to offer more value to other people. But I think that is a byproduct of making yourself into the best person you can be. The primary purpose to do that, though, is to achieve your own happiness. And a side effect of that, I see, is that you have more to offer to others. Oh, I didn't turn on my... I need to turn on my Google Voice page. I've got to open a new window. I forgot I have my Google Voice number listed on the backgrounds and on my thumbnail, but I'm not going to hear the call if I don't open the Google Voice page on my end here. Okay, I just did that. Doesn't look like anyone has tried to call so far. But I should hear it ring now if someone tries to call. 657-233-0878 is the number. I will say, says the JFO show, I will say sometimes I lean towards egoism simply from an epistemological perspective. That is, I know I can feel pleasure and pain, etc. I don't know others can. So if I try and do things for others at my expense, I risk helping no conscious beings and harming myself. Okay, well, I don't share your skepticism about whether others have pleasure and pain. I don't have any doubt. I know they do. I'm confident about that. But even so, that doesn't give me reason to privilege their pleasure or pain over mine, or even to treat it equivalently to mine. Why shouldn't I prioritize my own pleasure over someone else's? Why treat yourself the same as other people? I don't see a reason to do that. That's the most convincing argument for you for egoism, the fact that you don't know if others actually experience pleasure or pain. Okay, did I miss any chats? I think I read them all. If you are dead, I don't think you can value anything, says Jennifer. Yeah, that's right. I read that one before silently. I just didn't read it out loud. All right. What next? Anyone want to raise a new topic or? Oh, okay, we got a new chat here from the J Faux Show. What does that stand for? J Faux Show. I'm going to your channel. JFO Show. You say, not sure if that is egoism fully though, since I would still be a utilitarian in a sense, as I am maximizing pleasure of all beings with the knowledge I have. If others were proven to be conscious, I would consider them. So the ethics are still utilitarian, I suppose. You say JFO stands for the names of me and my friends that started it. Okay. So you're not sure if I'm conscious? Or your friends? Oh, hi, Nick. Nick says, hello, everyone. I didn't know there was going to be a show today. I didn't either. Until shortly before I started it. I was live streaming on TikTok, and then I ended that stream. And I was thinking about starting another TikTok live stream, but then I thought, maybe I should go over to YouTube and do a stream there. It's been a while since I did one there. And that struck me as a good idea. So I decided to do one. But I didn't announce it until a few minutes before I actually went live. So why privilege other people's pleasure, or treat it, maybe privilege is not the right word, but why treat it equivalently to your own? I assume you are in practice conscious, but I don't feel I actually have any evidence. What would you take as evidence? What would evidence be? Is it possible for there to be evidence of that? How about the principle of same cause, same effects? I have the same nature you do, at least at some level. Like, we're both human beings, we have similar biology, similar kinds of nervous systems. And so if all of that gives rise to consciousness in you, and I have a similar biology to you, why wouldn't it also give rise to consciousness in me? But there's also the question, even if you do know that I am conscious, why would you treat my pleasure equivalently to yours? Why not privilege your own? What led you to be a utilitarian? What was attractive about that view? By the way, my super chat is open. If anyone wants to make a contribution, maybe I should start a goal here. Yeah, I think I'll do that. I'll say 5 super chats within 3 hours. I don't know if I'm going to stream for that long, but I'm going to choose that. That's the longest time I can choose here. Start goal. I am trying to make money at this, so if you want to help me promote Rand's ideas, one way to do so is by making a financial contribution. I had a really good show last time I live streamed on YouTube. I made a lot of money. That encourages me to do more. So if you want to encourage me to keep streaming here on YouTube, one way to do that is to make a financial contribution through PayPal or Patreon, which are linked in the description, or through the super chat here. Otherwise, maybe I'll go back to TikTok. I was thinking about doing a second stream on TikTok today, because I usually get more viewers over there, but I make more money over here on YouTube, at least sometimes. We'll see how much I make today, if any. But I guess if I'm making money here, that's going to encourage me to stay here longer. Sorry, slow typing on my iPad. Will switch to my laptop. 1 second. Says JFO show. All right. We got 7 people here right now. Anybody else want to chime in? Oh, hi, Stephen. Stephen Katz. Hello. Okay, JFO show. He says, you do possess the same traits that allow me to be conscious, as far as I can tell. But there is always the lack of trust, in the sense, the matrix type scenario, etc. Okay. Well, is there a reason to believe that is actually the case? A Matrix type scenario? Or is that just an arbitrary fantasy? Do you have to disprove that in order to believe it's not the case? Or should the default be to just dismiss it unless there's evidence that that actually is the case? What if I make up some arbitrary scenario like there's a there's an elephant behind you right now, and when you turn to look to see it, well, it runs out of the way so you can't see it, and it's really fast. It's a really fast elephant, so you're never able to see it when you turn your head to look for it. Now, should you believe, maybe there's an elephant behind me? Is there a burden on you to disprove that in order to be able to say there's not an elephant? Or should you just discard that possibility and ignore it unless someone actually provides you evidence that there is such an elephant? Should you be agnostic, undecided as to whether or not there's an elephant behind you of the sort I described? This is raising the issue of the arbitrary. According to Rand, arbitrary statements like there's an elephant behind you should just be dismissed without consideration. Do you think there's enough innovation in education these days? Asked Stephen. No, I wish we had more. We need more of a free market in education, and then there would be more innovation. Oh, thanks for the super chat, Stephen. Appreciate that. First super chat of the day. Thank you. I'll read that in a second. I just want to read these others from you first. How long, where was it? How long do you think it took to hold my asylum interview today? 6.5 hours. That's long. Does Ayn Rand believe that everything in the universe is finite? And I guess that's the last one, and the same as the super chat. Well, very similar. Do you think everything in the universe is discrete and finite? I do think everything in the universe is finite, but I don't think everything is discrete if that's understood as contrary to continuous. I think the universe is continuous. There's no gaps between things, ultimately, little pockets of nothing. And I don't think there's infinitely small space between things. I guess ultimately, if to be at the deepest level, there's just a universe, one thing. It's just a continuous universe. There is no nothing. But on the perceptual level, that's not. We experience the universe as an array of entities are presented to us at the perceptual level. Like you see my AirPods here, my AirPod case. That's one thing, and then my phone is another entity. There's a bunch in you as a person. Oh, did somebody try to call in? Oh yeah, someone tried to call into Zoom. I don't know who that is. Can you identify yourself in the chat on YouTube? So we experience the world as consisting of many entities arrayed in space. There's lots of things or objects, entities, individuals. But when we're thinking more metaphysically about it and going beyond just what our senses give us, then in that way of thinking about it, I think you could say everything is continuous. Like between me and what's next to me, there's air, right? There's air. It's not that there's nothing. I'm an entity, but what we mean when we say that is not that there's nothing surrounding me. There's something everywhere, right? But we can't perceive it all with our senses, right? You can't perceive the air, at least with your eyes. Now you can feel it. If you move your hand fast enough, you can feel wind. So there are ways you can perceive it using other sense modalities. But surrounding me, the entity that I am and the entity that you are, there's air. And then if you think about the air, we've learned through science that it's composed of various types of molecules and atoms, like nitrogen. I think that's the main element. There's also oxygen. But that is, I don't think that's like atoms are composed of protons, neutrons, and electrons. But what exactly are those? I've heard it posited that perhaps electrons are excitations of an ether. You heard of the ether? That's sometimes it's been thought that that's the medium through which light travels. Light is, it's a wave, or at least has some wave-like properties. It also has some particle-like properties, and the medium through which the light waves is called the ether, or at least that's what some people have thought. Now, some scientists, I think, have concluded that there is no ether. The ether doesn't exist. And that might actually be a majority view, I think. But I think there has to be something, whether it's the ether as it was understood when it was first proposed. Maybe it's not exactly like that, but maybe there's some other sort of medium or entity or substance that pervades space. But I don't think there can just be nothing. like an absolute nothing, um, just because metaphysically there is no nothing. That would be a contradiction. Um, so if there's something everywhere, then you could conclude from that reality is continuous and not discrete. Even if that's not how we experience it at the perceptual level. All right, let me come back to the chat. But I do think everything is finite, like there, because otherwise I think it would be lacking identity. If it's infinite, it has no identity. And everything to be is to be something in particular. But to be infinite is to lack specificity. It's not something in particular. It's not this length or that length. But I don't know that that length is a concept that applies to the universe as such. I just saw some hundreds. Thank you for those. Float up. I don't think the universe as such has a length. The concept of space in length is a measurement of distance or of space, I guess you could say. That concept applies within the universe, but I don't think it applies to the universe as a whole. I see Stephen did some more chats here. Let me read those. What is in space? We seem to have parsecs of mostly vacuums, but there's no such thing as a vacuum. I need to look up parsecs. I've heard that. Is that a distance measurement? A unit of distance used in astronomy equal to about 3.26 light years. One parsec corresponds to the distance at which the mean radius of the Earth's orbit subtends an angle of 1 second of arc. Okay. So what is in space? Well, I don't know what it is. I mean, we could call it the ether as a placeholder and understand it to mean that which is where nothing isn't. But if you want something more informative, I think that's something that scientists would have to figure out. I don't know as a philosopher other than to say there is no nothing in an absolute sense of nothing. You can say there's nothing in my pocket, and by that you mean I have no objects, like I don't have a phone or I don't have keys in my pocket, but you don't mean nothing in an absolute sense. Like there's no air in there, there's no electromagnetic waves passing through there. Yeah, so there's no vacuum in an absolute sense, if that means absolutely nothing, but there could be a vacuum in the sense that there's no air, but maybe there's radiation of some kinds. Light, for instance. What's between the nucleus and the lowest energy electron? Yeah, I don't know. So I heard Harry Benswanger talking about this just yesterday, I think. He did an interview with, he was interviewed by James Elias, who runs a YouTube channel called Inductica. And they talk some about this issue. And I think electrons are, I forget exactly the terms, but maybe something like an area where there's more than usual excitation surrounding the nucleus, but it's not like a planet going around the sun where there's well, I'm not going to say there's nothing between them, but it's not as discrete as that at the perceptual level. There's got to be something everywhere. So between the nucleus and the electron, but the electron is just a greater density or something of what might also exist between where the electron is detectable and between the nucleus. I don't know if that was clear. But, oh, Roman Viking is here. Hello. Intercessor Dice is also here. All right, thanks for your super chat, Stephen. Thanks again. If anyone else wants to do a super chat, I'll give your chats priority. Let's see what some of these other chats have to say. I think I see a contradiction in your views. I see you support the USA and Israel, but both demand your tax dollars via force, which Ayn Rand would consider theft, unless it's just the people you support. Well, I don't say Israel and the US are perfect, and one of their imperfections is the fact that they have taxation, which is coercive. So they're not perfect countries, but they are good countries. They're basically free. There's a large amount of freedom, like freedom of speech, for example, freedom of religion, property rights, to a large extent. So I support them for those reasons, but I criticize them for taxation, among other things. Like the military draft, which Israel has, and that's bad. That's a violation of rights. Quantum field theory seems like the most fundamental physics theory half proven at the moment, says Roman Viking. I don't know much about that. All right, now we got 9 people watching. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for any likes also on the stream. Appreciate that. Now, this is actually, sometimes when I do my TikTok live streams, I have the same number of people I've got right now. Like sometimes it's down in the single digits or the teens. But sometimes it gets much higher. Like sometimes it goes over 100. So it's much more volatile. The average is, I think the average is usually over 20. But in terms of money, the average is much higher on YouTube. Like I made a lot more money today with Steven's one super chat than I've made in probably I don't know, like 5 to 10 Like, how many live streams would it take me to get $10 on TikTok? I would guess 10 or more live streams. At least at this point, at the rate I'm making money. So that does give me incentive to spend more time over here. Oh, I was gonna. Yeah, that person who called into Zoom, is he still there? No, I guess he dropped out. Might have just been a troll. His username was something like call user one or something. But I asked him to identify himself in the chat, and I didn't see anything. So maybe he got spooked and ran away. I don't know. By the way, I'm sucking on a cough drop. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm sorry if you do. I try to distance myself from the mic so the sound doesn't come through as much. And but if you do hear that, you can let me know, and I can try to move the mic a little further. All right, let's see what else we got in here. I'm curious why you like immigration. I also am generally sympathetic in the US and the UK where I live, but I wonder if we arrive there in this similar way. Well, I like immigration because I see it as an expression of freedom. Freedom to move and live where you choose. I don't think you should be forcibly stopped from living where you live, where you want to live, as long as you're not violating anybody's rights by moving there. And I don't think you are. Now, you don't have a right to move into my home. My home is my personal property, and you can only come onto my personal property if you have my consent. But a nation is not personal property. It's just a realm in which a certain government has a monopoly on the use of force. So the US government has a monopoly on the use of force within certain borders, and that defines the borders of the US. But that doesn't mean everything within that border is personal property. So simply crossing a national border doesn't mean you're trespassing on somebody's personal property. So I don't think that it should be. I don't think it's any violation of rights simply to cross a border. Whereas it would be if you're going onto someone's personal property without their consent. But if I want to invite some immigrant onto my personal property in the U.S., then it's all consensual. No one has a right to stop them. So I see immigration as just an expression of freedom. It's only when you're violating someone else's rights that it's justifiable to forcibly stop someone. And you only violate rights when you override someone's voluntary consent. But your consent is not necessary for someone to come in the same country you're living in. Your consent is necessary for someone to go on your personal property, but it's not necessary for someone to enter the country you're living in. All right, we got some more chats. Jennifer says, yes, I agree. I guess that's about the immigration stuff. Japan shouldn't have a right to remain Japanese, though. With their population dip, they can be overwhelmed without controlling their nation, which is historically tied to their people. Jennifer says yes on immigration. Well, what? No, I don't think Japan has a right to remain Japanese if doing so violates other people's rights. If it means coercing other people, initiating force against other people, like by forcibly stopping them from moving there. But what do you mean when you say remain Japanese? Does that mean speak the same language? What does it mean to remain Japanese? Does it mean to have Japanese DNA? Japanese culture? I don't think those are issues of rights. You don't have a right for your area to... If people in your area don't like your language or your cuisine or your customs, they don't have to follow them. Like if I move to Mexico and I don't like to wear traditional Mexican clothing or eat traditional Mexican food, there's no right on the part of the Mexican government to force me to eat those things or dress in a certain way. As long as I'm not using force on anyone, I can act however I choose to. So there's no right to maintain a certain culture. If what you mean by culture is things like food or language, holidays. That would be imposing your views by force on others. I mean, the people who are Japanese and want to stay that way, who like their customs, they can stay that way, but I don't think they have a right to force others to behave the same way. Oh, hi, Mellow Mal. He says, for me, remain Japanese would refer to the language, culture, and aesthetics. Yeah, I think that should just be an issue of individual choice. Gatya says Intercessor Dice. The freedom argument would definitely be part of it for me, says JFO Show. But of course, utility comes first for me, because you're a utilitarian. Freedom generally equals utility for me, but I don't think it's one-to-one. I think you might have addressed my question earlier. I asked something like, why would you not privilege yourself over others? I was challenging your utilitarianism from my egoist perspective. I don't know if you, I think you said something, you might have said something about that, but that was around the time Steven's super chat came in, so I wanted to jump ahead and go straight to that and give it some priority. I got a super chat goal going here, so if anyone wants to help promote my show, that's one way you can help out. Help me get Ayn Rand's ideas out there. I also appreciate new subscribers. Let me take a look at my analytics today. Okay. Oh, wow. Got a big spike in views here. That's nice to see. I haven't seen that in a while. It got up to almost 60 views in the first hour of my live stream. That's good. I haven't seen that in a while. I get fewer views on the TikTok live streams I've been posting, and understandably so. It's not surprising that I would get more engagement when I'm actually doing a live stream on YouTube. But it's nice to see that kind of spike. It's been a while since I got that. Oh, Mellow Mao just became We the Living member. Thank you. Thank you, Mellow Mao. Appreciate that. Yeah, you can become a channel member, and there's actually some perks you can get now. Finally, for a while I've had channel memberships, but there weren't any associated perks. There were just ways of supporting the channel, which I appreciate. But now I've started making some of my videos members only. So if you become a member at any level, you can get access to them. Like I've made a couple of my live streams on TikTok. I've made members only, and I haven't figured out what my policy is going to be going forward, like exactly what videos I'm going to make members only and which ones I'll just make available to anyone. So I still got to figure that out, but I am starting to make some of my content members only. And if you want to get access to that, you can hit the join button and become a channel member for as little as like $1.49 per month. If you join through an iPhone, I think it might be a little cheaper on an Android, maybe even cheaper if you join through a laptop. Maybe it's only $1 a month. And so far, the two videos that I've made members only, I've made them available to any level of membership. So I've got the Anthem level, which is the first level. That's the lowest cost, like $1, under $2 per month. But then there's the We the Living, which is the next. That's the one Mellow Mao just did. That's the next level up. And then there's the Fountainhead level, Atlas Shrugged level, named it after Ayn Rand's novels. And then the highest level is the Ayn Rand level. And so far, I've been making my videos available to any level of membership, but maybe in the future I'll decide to make some of my videos available only to higher levels, like We the Living and up. So it's a work in progress to figure out, what's the best way to do it. But at least now, there's some content which is exclusive to channel members, and I hope that will help generate more revenue, because now there's something to gain by being a channel member. Some exclusive content you can get access to. And I guess the one way I could do it is like this. So my first TikTok live stream that I made a channel members only video, it was that way from when I first published it. But the next video, I premiered it and that was open to everyone. But after the premiere ended, then I made it a members only. So it was only temporarily accessible to everyone, and later I changed it to a members only. So I might play around with that kind of switch. But, all right, let's see what else we got here. His good bad board often gets people to call in and react. You could ask about one. What is bad with faith, says Measley. It means belief without evidence. And it's bad to believe things if you don't have evidence for them. I renewed my membership. I had a credit card issue this month, so I just fixed it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks for the renewal. All right, now we got some new people joining. Okay. JFO says, I did respond on the Egoist challenge. I said I am utilitarian because I see no reason to believe my pleasure and pain matters more just because I happen to be in this body. All right, well, I'm not sure I can convince you out of that. I don't know how to do that. As for me, I don't know how you can convince me to be a utilitarian. For me, it's just, I don't know if I should say it's self-evident, but it's just, I mean, I think maybe it comes back to the point about where we get the concept of good is our own experience of pleasure. And we don't get the concept of good by observing the fact that other people experience pleasure. It's because we experience pleasure ourselves. And so if you try to divorce the concept of value from me and say, oh, well, it shouldn't be your pleasure that matters the most, it's just, it doesn't make any sense to me why you would think that. Why would you come to that view? So you see no reason to believe your pleasure matters more. I see no reason to think others' pleasure matters the same as mine. So are we just at a stalemate then? Maybe we are. Because you're you, isn't it? Like, I got into this with my advisor actually when I was in grad school. My grad school advisor and we have a discussion about this. It's actually on my YouTube channel. You can look up Professor Molyneux or Bernard Molyneux on my channel. You can see the discussion. He raised this point about like egoism versus altruism. He said, well, you experience pleasure and other people experience pleasure. Why should you value yours more than somebody else's? Because it's mine. What else do you say? What else can I say? I mean, why should I value his pleasure? I want to experience pleasure. Because I'm me. That's why I value my pleasure the most. It's just obvious or self-evident to me why I would care more about something that affects me than something that affects somebody else. So yeah, I don't know how to argue with someone who doesn't see it that way. In a proper world, Israel would not end up majority Jewish, says Jennifer. But they are surrounded by enemies. Even so, non-Jews live in Israel. Yeah. There's 2 million Arabs in Israel, and they have equal rights. And in a proper world, I don't think there should need to be a state like Israel, a place where Jews can be safe. They should be able to immigrate to any country and be safe, like they should be able to immigrate to the U.S. But unfortunately, our immigration laws are very restrictive and make it very difficult for people to immigrate here. So given that that's the case, I support there being a state of Israel, which makes me a Zionist. All right. I'm opening the chat on my phone so I can look at the end of the chat here. All right, we got some more people coming by. Nice. Thanks for coming by. Appreciate the likes, as well as shares and subscribes. Oops. There's a lot of chats I haven't gotten to yet. But if you want your chat to stand out, if you want me to address it, you can put some money on it, do a super chat, and then I'll give it priority. Like Steven did. Is We the Living similar to Dr. Zhivago? I haven't seen that movie, so I can't comment on that. All right, we got some discussion of faith going on in the chat. Looks like someone is in my waiting lobby. Oh, again? Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, Will Marino. Oh, yeah, I saw there was a message from you in the chat. Thanks for notifying me of that, Mal. There was a chat from you earlier. Oh, it was retracted. Can you tell me in the chat what you want to talk about? I'm usually looking at the chat when I'm scrolling through it, and that's a different window than my Zoom window, so I didn't see that notification. If you let me know in the YouTube chat that you want to call, that'll help me become aware sooner. I'm reading this exchange between Measley and Jennifer about faith. Oh, here's another one from Will Marino. Doesn't everyone believe their philosophy will lead to the most good? So everyone is utilitarian. Well, utilitarianism means that you think the good is that which leads to the greatest good of the greatest number. So maybe it's circular, actually, in a way, because you define the good in terms of good. What is the good? The good is that which leads to the greatest good of the greatest number. Okay, but what is the good? Is there a kind of circularity there? But no, not everyone is an egoist. Sorry, not everyone is utilitarian. Because I think what is good is that which best promotes your own life and well-being, or your own happiness. And I think as a byproduct, as a secondary effect of that, it actually is best for everyone else as well. I think it's best for everyone if everyone is an egoist. But the reason to be an egoist is not because it benefits others the most. It's because it benefits yourself the most. I believe in the lived experience of ghost seers. Isn't that objectivism? Nope. It's not objectivism to just believe anything anyone tells you. So if someone says they experience the ghost, I don't think that should be taken at face value. People can lie. People can hallucinate. People can be deluded. JFO says, I think we are at a stalemate. Maybe I'll call in one day. A more flowing conversation could dig into it a bit more. But I still think we would be circling the fundamental disagreement. Yeah, maybe we would. Ordinary claims require ordinary evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, says Mao. Ghost's existence would be extraordinary because it would imply all sorts of things about souls. Can this guy get to our debate about ghosts? All right, well, I'm there now. What is a ghost? Can you define a ghost? People see pink elephants too. They're being irrational, says Jennifer. And she puts C in quotes. Or maybe they're drunk and they're hallucinating. Or maybe they're doing drugs, psychedelics. Non-Jews live like second-class citizens. No, they have equal rights. There's Arabs in the parliaments, the Knesset. There are some things where Jews actually do have privileges they shouldn't have, but I think for the most part, Israel is not perfect, but I think for the most part they're equal. And actually, in some ways, non-Jews have special privileges. Like, I don't think Muslims are required to serve in the IDF. No one should be required to serve in the IDF. Conscription is a violation of rights, but right now there are certain carve-outs, I think, for Muslims and maybe also some Orthodox Jews. Will Marino wants to join the call. Are you still in there? Oh, yeah. Let's see. So, what did you want to talk about, Will? You say, yeah, you're here. Yeah, I see you in the lobby there. Um, could you just remind me what you want to talk about? I don't remember if you already... You think I am secretly a utilitarian? That's what you want to talk about? I'm not sure if I want to discuss that. JFO says, I don't think he is, but I'm here for it. I don't think it's possible for anyone to have beliefs that aren't utilitarian. He says, well, I guess if you keep it civil here, that's one of my rules here, then we can do at least a short call. All right, I'll bring you on for at least a short call. We'll see how it goes. Let me go back to my OBS setup here. And I gotta unmute the audio, so actually before I unmute the audio for YouTube, let me just bring you on so that I can hear you. And then if that works, then I'll put you through to YouTube. Where's my controls here? Okay, here we go. Hello. Hello. All right. So I can hear you, and you want to talk about utilitarianism? Why you think everyone is one? All right. Let me just put your volume up so that people on YouTube can hear you. Say something. Okay. Okay. I think you should be audible now. So let me know in the chat if you can't hear the caller. But we've now got Will Marino here on the line to talk about why he thinks everyone is a utilitarian. All right, go for
Um,
it.
yeah, so pretty much I think there's no such thing as like a self-contained belief. And what I mean by that is I think by
Oh, hold on, hold on.
pers
JFO says can't hear him. Let me try something else.
pretty much I think there's no
Oh, I
such
can
thing
hear him.
as like a self-contained belief.
Maybe there was just a delay of a few seconds. Okay, I don't need to change anything. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that uh, pretty much you can't have a belief in a vacuum. You can't identify with an ideology outside of its social function. And I believe it's impossible to identify with something without having a positive view of it, which uh, like also pretty much means that you can't identify with something without thinking it would be better for other people to identify with it as well. And so I think like a good example of this is like someone who's a nihilist, right? It's impossible to not actually have any values or beliefs because if you're identifying with nihilism, right, you're having a belief in the first place. But you have that from a sort of reactionary standpoint that you think other people's beliefs are false. And so if you like identify with nihilism, right, you subconsciously uh, have like this sort of a social function of like a spreader of nihilism, the same way that like uh, you claim to be a rationalist, right? I mean, sorry, an objectivist, um, and that's like a fine philosophy to have for yourself for your own good. But you also hold this YouTube channel where you spread the ideas of Ayn Rand. And that in itself is sort of a utilitarian pursuit because you're pretty much saying, I think everyone else should be a objectivist because it would be best for society, or why else would you have this view, right? So I think by like identifying with something, you offer like a pseudo endorsement, and you're doing this on a larger scale with egoism. Nihilists do this with nihilism, but it doesn't like it just kind of holds a different function, a different idea of what good is.
Well, the reason I'm promoting Ayn Rand's philosophy here is for self interested reasons. It's not because it benefits others. That's not the primary reason. The primary reason is because I want the world that I live in to be a better place. And I think it will be better for me if more people in the world accept, first become aware of, and then ultimately accept these ideas. So it's for self interested reasons that I'm doing this.
Right, but within that ideology, right, the world has to be better for others for it to be better for you. So there's sort of a
Okay, but the
reflexive
reason
nature to it, right?
I don't want the world to be better for others as an end in itself. I want it to be better for others because that will ultimately benefit me.
Yeah, but there's no, you know, like within this philosophy, there's no better for others within a vacuum, right? Nothing's self-contained. So like you can't, uh, because of the worldview you hold, you can't, like you inherently couldn't only want one of these things.
Well, I don't think there's a conflict between what's good for me and what's good for others. I think there's a harmony of interests, but it's not true that I see them as equal in importance. I think what's fundamental and what gives rise to my caring about other people is because they matter to me. And if I didn't care about myself, I wouldn't have reason to care about others. So my self-interest is of fundamental importance to me, but other people's well-being is not of fundamental interest. It's of interest to me, but it's not of fundamental interest.
I I disagree. I think because your sense of well-being, right, necessitates the well-being of others, there's sort of a reflexive property because you espouse egoism, right? If you believe that your well-being necessitates the well-being of others and other people should also be egoists, right, then they also believe that their well-being should is like based on your well-being, right? So you kind of have this like whole ideology of just like general well-being, right? The general good. You want the general good, right? Like there is no like you-based ontology, right? Because other people exist, so it has to be reflexive.
Okay, look, if here's a hypothetical. If my well-being were served by the annihilation of everybody else, if that were the only road to happiness for me, I would say yes, I want everyone else to be annihilated.
But it isn't,
Okay, but it's a
right?
way of showing that
But
I don't place equal value on everyone's well-being. I prioritize my own.
right. But you can't separate like the belief you hold from what you think the consequence of that belief will be, right? Like no one would believe in anything if they thought it would have like my point is you like if you thought that your ultimate well-being would be at the expense of others, right? You would stop thinking that only your well-being is the best thing, right? Your
No, I
belief is
wouldn't.
predicated. I don't think that's true.
No, I just gave you an example where my if in this hypothetical, I don't think it's true, but if we stipulate that my well-being is served by screwing everybody else over, I would say I should do what serves my well-being. Everybody else can get screwed over.
I think I don't know. I take issue with the use of a hypothetical like this, given you don't actually believe that your well-being would mean others being screwed over, right? Like, I don't see belief as a series of like if-then statements. I think like belief isn't a tree where you have a central point and that where you have a central belief and then other things spring out of it, right? I think it's more of like a network where you have different ideas that enforce each other, right? So I think like uh, one belief, right, you have is that the well-being of others is good, right? That enforces another belief that you have that the well-being of yours is good because you tie these two things together, right? It's not like you can hold a central belief and then derive everything off from that because that isn't the nature of like how humans work, right? You have a vast set of like um, associative logics within your brain, right? You're not a computer.
Well, there are associations, like there are relations between beliefs. But one thing I'm saying is that the relation that the belief, if I have the belief that others have value, that's like a branch that grows out of the trunk, my core trunk
Right. I
belief.
know. I know.
So yeah,
But
I'm not
but
denying there's a network of beliefs, but I'm saying the relation that the network has is such that my valuing of myself is more important.
no, but like belief is, I don't think there's a central belief, right? Like before you learned about objectivism, right? You had a general set of like, moral values that when you learned what objectivism was, you were able to identify it as something that you thought would provide you like good in some way, right?
Yeah, I mean, it
So
made
what I'm
sense
saying
to
is,
me.
yeah, exactly. But without like those beliefs behind the name, right? The set of things that are like woven together that allow you to identify with objectivism, you wouldn't have identified with it. And so I think like while you can act like or like, sort of claim that there is a logical center to your beliefs, the belief wouldn't exist in the first place without like the background of the belief. Like what I'm saying is like everything within the system is reflexive. You can't start from a central point and branch outward. You have to start from every single point and see every connection to it.
Okay, we're getting into epistemology here. I just want to acknowledge Mellow Mao did a super chat for $10. Thank you, Mellow Mao. I appreciate that. Let me read that. I'm not sure if it's on this topic, but he says, for me, utilitarianism is defined as one, consequentialism, two, goal is to maximize aggregation slash addition of utilities, three, utility equals hedonism equals pleasure minus pain. Is this what the caller means by utilitarianism? Okay, well, he's asking you a question. I don't know if you see that on your screen, but I guess since he's directing this or asking what you mean, if you want to address that, you can. William, is that your name? Will? Oh, you got muted?
Yeah,
Oh, you just
sorry.
unmuted. Okay. Yeah, do you see that super chat from Mellow Mao?
Um,
Thank you, Mellow Mao. Appreciate that.
yeah, my problem with this is like utility, like hedonism, pleasure, all of these things are like so poorly defined. It doesn't like, make sense as a coherent worldview to me. Like what I'm saying is like because there is no like because all of these things can be taken in any way, it like it's just so broad that like I don't think anyone believes like anything else.
Well,
And I
that gets
think also,
into some deeper epistemological issues. So, if you don't think that the concept pleasure is well defined, or if you think it's subjective or something, then it seems like that would rule out utilitarianism since that's defined in terms of pleasure.
well, that's not what I mean. I think um, everyone seeks pleasure, right? But like the idea that there's one central pleasure is fraud.
Okay.
Like the idea that pleasure is defined as like happy feeling and that everyone has the exact same association of that.
Well, I mean, we could talk about that, I guess. Like, what does pleasure mean? I think that's a somewhat different issue than the one we were talking about.
Yeah, I agree that it's a different issue. But I think if you want to go back to the point about objectivism, I think um, like it's easy to talk in it's sort of abstract terms about beliefs, but I think it's like most important to judge someone's beliefs based on their actions. And like you are engaging with me right now, right? We're talking this through. Uh, you saw me be kind of rude in the chat. You have every reason to believe that I would not be a convert to objectivism, and yet we're still having this conversation. It seems like, at least to me, a little altruistic.
Actually, I didn't see you be rude in the chat. Is that the one you deleted?
Uh, I don't think so.
At some point, somebody retracted a message. I don't know if that was you. Did you ever retract a message?
Um, Maybe. I think I made a point I didn't like,
Okay.
but I feel like I was a little terse. No?
Oh well, I don't know. I didn't get that impression from, at least from what I can remember of seeing from you. But I don't think this is altruistic. I think this is egoistic. I mean, I see this having this call with you as helping provide me content for my YouTube channel. I benefit from that. I just got a super chat from Mellow Mao, which maybe I wouldn't have gotten if I weren't having this call. So I am benefiting. It's helping to grow my audience. So I'm definitely benefiting. And if I weren't benefiting, I would not be doing this.
Yeah, I mean, you could right wing grift though. Like, I mean, Ayn Rand is pretty niche, all things concerned.
Well, I don't see it as my interest to grift. I don't think I would. That would undercut my self-esteem, my self-respect, and lose me the kind of audience which I want to gain.
Right, but isn't like, self respect is another of these, like, you know, like kind of broad values that, like, I feel like it's hard to, like, put any, like, why does one care about self respect? Why does one care about esteem? Right, like, it's all in relation to others.
Oh
And so
no
I think
no
it's
no! Why
like,
do you say that? I want to feel good about myself.
right, but
If
there's
I'm alone
no,
on an island, there's no others around. I want to feel good about myself. It has nothing to do with others.
okay, uh, well, I'm not, let me give you, do you think this is like the idea of self esteem is one that like exists within a vacuum? Like, if you had no, you know, contact with anyone else at all, that you'd still have this sense of like self.
I mean, for at least a while, I could. I mean, no one exists in a vacuum. And like I was born to parents, right? I had to have parents, and they raised me. So I guess if I were raised by wolves, well, at least I got some wolves to raise me. But that doesn't mean that self-esteem is essentially about other people. It's essentially about myself, how I feel towards myself.
Right, but like, what's an act that could cause you to lower your self esteem? Like, what
If
is, like you
like if
said,
I let's say I eat a bunch of junk food and I get sick, or maybe I put on a bunch of weight and become very unhealthy, I think I would lose respect for myself by mistreating my own body that way.
right, but like your conception of what is, um, poor versus good treatment of your body is socially defined, right?
No.
Of course it is. There are plenty of cultures where people are of varying weights and it is perceived as
Mm,
normal. It is like, I mean, we have like this whole, um, anti-fat phobia movement. That is a uh, new cultural definition of what is healthy, whether you agree with it or not, but it does show like these things are relative.
no, I disagree. No, it comes back to your own pleasure. If I'm alone on an island, there are certain things which lead to my pleasure. One of them is being healthy. And if I eat junk food or if I eat the wrong thing on that island, I'm going to get sick. And it's my own experience of pleasure, which has nothing to do with society. I came into this world with a pleasure pain mechanism that was built into me, and whether there's anyone around me or not, certain things are going to cause me to feel good, other things are going to cause me to feel bad.
I disagree with that. I think if you look culturally at whether throughout history, being fat or being fit has been an indicator of wealth, right? You see like rather recent movement um, towards like being muscular as an indicator of having money, whereas previously you'd have these robber barons. They'd be like gigantic men because it was viewed as uh, good to have accumulated enough that you can eat well, right? So it provided them pleasure to have these large bodies, and so I think in that sense it's socially defined, right? Whereas now we view fitness as like the absolute, as a positive body because it takes more effort, more disposable income to, like hire a trainer, go to a gym or whatever, you know, it's a different, like what people derive pleasure from, body wise, I think is, well, as I said, like derived from cultural standards.
Okay, well, yeah, we definitely differ on that. So I think I have a way on an island alone to figure out what's good for me. And if I'm in society, I can question. Like if someone gives me advice and it leads to me having a lot of pain, I'm going to say it's bad, even if lots of people do it. So it's not society that is the ultimate arbiter of what I think is good and bad. If people tell me, "Hey, do this fad diet," and it leads to me having all kinds of pain and suffering, I'm going to say, "Screw that! I'm doing it. I'm not doing it your way. I'm doing it the way that leads to my pain, my pleasure."
I don't mean to ask this facetiously, but do you ever work out?
What difference does it make?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people would categorize exercise as a pretty painful experience, right? Um,
Well, I mean, there
and
can be short
one
term
would,
pain, but if there's longer run benefits, then it could
right,
be a
so
net benefit, a net pleasurable activity.
yeah, but I feel like you can't, like, it's two different, completely different senses of pleasure and pain, right? Like, the like momentary panting and like ache in your side you get when you're running versus a sense of like satisfaction you get from like whatever being fit, affords you. And I think it is not like, I don't know, I think this plain pain pleasure dichotomy is like kind of apples to oranges, like, because I mean, what do you get? Well, okay, I guess we've been through this. Never mind. I was gonna make the same argument. I'm realizing. Um, can we talk about ghosts and lived experience?
Ghosts. Well, that's a change. I think maybe I should address Mellowmouth's super chat some more. Um, let's see. He says, and let me read his other chat. He says, "Personally, I have self-respect because my goals are valuable and my talents feel decently effective. So I have self-respect for me." And then he says, "True," which is put with some up arrows, referencing something above, I guess. "True, which is a good argument against taking one's values purely from society." I guess he's referring to the Measley's comment. Society causing people to behave in ways which are detrimental. Cult rituals, he says. Okay, let me see if I have more to say on his super
Well,
chat.
hold on. Isn't the like when you have a cult, right? Like, oh, sorry. Well, like a cult is something that is only viewed as a cult from the outside. So I feel like again you have this like sort of perception of what's good and bad that's like highly socially based, right? And we only say that like the values outside of the cult are good because a large amount of people agree on them.
I no, I don't think so. I don't think majority is your guide to the truth. If a majority says that 2 plus 2 is 5, that's not a good reason to believe 2 plus 2 is 5.
Right, but it's a socially beneficial reason, which would lead someone to believe that.
You have a very socialist view. You have like you're a epistemological socialist, maybe,
Mm.
or a metaphysical socialist. Um, and let me spend a little more time here on this super chat because he did put some money on it, and I want to see if I can say some more about his his super chat. Okay, so he says, for me, utilitarianism is defined as one, consequentialism. I think that's right. That's part of it. So it's consequences that matter. It's not a deontological framework where you should do something just because it's your duty. It's because it has certain consequences. Namely, it leads to the greatest good of the greatest number. Um, and I think you could say egoism is a type of consequentialism where the consequences that matter are the consequences on yourself, on your own life, rather than on everyone else's life. Or if you do consider consequences on other people's lives, it's only because ultimately those consequences have effects on your life. Like if you care about a friend, it's because the friend's well-being matters to you. Okay, so there is some overlap between egoism and utilitarianism, but then he says in point two, part of utilitarianism is the goal is to maximize aggregation slash addition of utilities. And I think importantly, it's to any conscious being. So not just you, but any person. And some utilitarians, I think, would broaden it even beyond humans and say animals' consciousness as well, or insects if they have consciousness, and also not just presently existing conscious beings, but ones that might exist in the future. I think this is what some people in the effective altruism movements are concerned about. They want to consider future generations, not just present ones. Okay, and then point three, you say utility equals hedonism equals pleasure minus pain. Now, I think Mill and John Stuart Mill and maybe some other utilitarians like Jeremy Bentham distinguished between different kinds of pleasure. Like there's the pleasure of a pig rolling in the mud, but then there's what you might call higher pleasures, and they do distinguish between quality of pleasure. But I haven't read up much on the utilitarians, so I couldn't. This is not a scholarly treatment, but I'm just trying to give you a feel for some of the distinctions they might make. They don't necessarily only consider pleasure in the moments. Um, they could also consider more refined, I think what they might call more refined pleasures. And then they have this calculus, um, like, or at least in principle, like I don't think that they can actually come up with some calculus to figure out, what is the good thing to do. Um, but in principle, you could weigh like maybe if something is a very low quality pleasure, but you have a lot of it, versus a much higher quality pleasure, but you only have a little of that. Maybe if you multiply it all together by the right coefficient or something, you could figure out what gives you the most pleasure overall, and then do that thing. But I don't think in practice you can actually do that, which is a kind of criticism you can make of utilitarianism. It doesn't give you any practical guidance. And how are you supposed to compute the pleasure of every conscious being in the world now, and also the pleasure and the pain of all the conscious beings in the future? So you might think it's just a very impractical philosophy for because it's incalculable. So utility, I'm going back to the super chat now. Utility equals hedonism plus equals pleasure minus pain. Is this what the caller means by utilitarianism? Okay, so if you want to address anything I said, or if you want to address that question now that I've elaborated on some of the terms of it, feel free, Will.
Yeah. My understanding was that essentially utilitarianism uh, is a philosophy for the maximization of pleasure um, which like okay, gross pleasure, I guess. Um, uh, and so I think like I guess my overall point is like you are providing a view of objectivism that is uh, by nature utilitarian, but I don't like you. You could be saying like objectivism says any number of things if you thought that the best thing for you would be to like it would provide you the most amount of pleasure to like go shoot up a school or whatever. Like you could be giving any example of like what you think the best form of or what you think a form of objectivism was that would actually like suit the definition of the philosophy, but you choose to give one that is utilitarian in nature. And I don't think you can separate those two things from each other, right? I think like uh, you have to take like the ontological perspective of the branch of the tree as well as of, you know, the trunk. That's essentially my argument.
Okay. Uh, I guess I maybe we've hit a wall here. I'm not sure what more to say. I
Yeah,
don't
I
see
think we've
why
hit
you
a
say
wall.
it's like utilitarian in nature, but maybe that gets back to this tree and branch
Because
analogy
you're saying you want the most good.
for me.
Yeah, but you're saying, okay, you're saying I want the most good for me. In parentheses, this requires everyone else creating the most good for themselves, right? But like, if you turn that around,
Well, I don't know
it's
if I am
also
saying
saying,
that. I
but
mean,
you
I
that
think
is
I
going.
will. I think I will be best off if others pursue their own interests, but that doesn't mean that the reason I do what I do is because I think it maximizes the the well-being of everyone. I do what I do because it maximizes my well-being,
Right.
which is not the utilitarian reason for doing things.
No, but you said your well-being is tied to the well-being of everyone, right?
No, I gave the island example.
Right, but you gave that as a hypothetical of something that you don't actually believe, right?
No, I
Because the
do believe
scenario,
if
no,
I'm
no,
on an
no,
island,
no,
if
no, right. But you're not on an island,
it doesn't
right?
matter.
Of course it matters.
Why?
Because because you're not on an island, right? Like if you didn't have language to describe all of this, you couldn't still be an objectivist. Like it's defined by everything that's around you, right? There is no any of this without anything that came before it. Like you can't have these ideas without words to put to these ideas, without a place to share the ideas, right? Because there's a social function to all of this, right? You, if you were on an island within like a month, you would forget what objectivism was. And maybe this
No
is an
way.
impasse, but I do firmly believe that you wouldn't be thinking about Ayn Rand if like the only thing on your mind was your survival. It might in nature be objectivist, right? But it's like calling like the communal living of Native Americans communist, right? It's not communist because it doesn't have the social history of communism behind it, right? Although it may be communitarian in nature, right? Like things don't exist outside of their cultural contexts.
They can, but we got to leave it at this. I think
All
I
right.
think we're maybe we just we're at an impasse here, and but let's wrap it up. I do appreciate your call.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
for
you for
your
taking my
participation.
arguments.
All right, bye
All
bye.
right. Bye.
Okay, yeah. If you're on an island, there are things that are good for you and not good for you, even if you're alone, right? Like getting eaten by a shark or something, or uh, getting tripping and slicing your hand on a sharp rock. That's bad for you, whether anyone else is around or not. I feel that pain. I feel that pain, and when I eat food because I'm hungry, on the islands, I feel that pleasure. Regardless of what anyone else thinks or believes about that, I feel that pleasure. That's not social. So he's got a very socialist view of the world, and not just political socialist. He's like deeply metaphysically or epistemologically socialist. Um, but I'm individualist in a very deep way. All right, I got some more chats here. Let me read some more. I'm going to read some of Mellow Mouse because he did a super chat. Super chat. Let me pull up the chat on screen. For me, the biggest difference between utilitarianism and objectivism, he says, is premise 2. Objectivists respect individual rights, even if they do not maximize group utility. Well, that's a political application of objectivism, but I think more deeply, it's that the good is what benefits yourself, not what maximizes benefit to any person. And it falls out of that what benefits yourself is individual rights. But that's a consequence of egoism, according to objectivism. That's a very important consequence. But respecting individual rights is best for everyone. I mean, the idea of rights is that excuse me, gotta take a cough drop. I muted the mic when I did that. When I did my TikTok live stream earlier, I forgot to unmute after I took the cough drop, and I went on for 5 minutes not realizing I was muted. Hopefully I won't do that here. What was I saying? Individual rights. Oh, yeah. So rights are a principle that enables people to exist in a harmonious way together by not coercing each other. That's the basic idea of individual rights. You're free to act as you choose, as you judge is good, as long as you're not coercing others and overriding their judgment. So it's about harmony. It's by its nature, rights are designed to enable everyone to succeed and flourish. So I think I don't know that it makes sense to think like objectivism respects rights even if they don't maximize his group utility, when the whole idea of rights is to enable everyone to do as well as possible. I mean, fundamentally, it's to help the individual do well in a social context, which implies it's best for everyone, because everyone is an individual. I don't know if that was clear, but let me go on. Utilitarians sometimes recommend strange ideas like donating one person's organs to save 5 people. Yeah. But Yeah, I guess I'm thinking like if we stipulate a hypothetical where respecting individual rights does not maximize group utility, would objectivism still endorse it? um, I don't know. Um, I guess, but if you're since the group is just composed of individuals, I think respecting individual rights means respecting the rights of all the individuals in the group. So I think you have to be maximizing group utility if you are respecting individual rights. So there's not a conflict between what's good for the individual and what's good for the society, since there is no good for society apart from what is good for the individuals that compose society. All right, I got some new people here in the chat. Someone says I'm slow answering these. I'm not even going to be here when you get to this comment. Well, if you can prioritize your comment by sending me a super chat. Why is God bad? Well, he commands people to do bad things, like he commands, if we're talking about the Christian God, he commands Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac, and then at the last minute says, nope, just wanted to make sure you were obeying me, that you had faith. Faith is bad. It means belief without evidence. God demands obedience, irrational obedience. But he actually doesn't exist, so there really is no God to be bad, but that's my view. But if he did exist, then I don't think he sets a good example. Reason is good. Faith is bad. But God demands faith and obedience. Maybe God lacks self-esteem, so he needs the approval and admiration of others to feel good about himself. He needs their obedience. I think a self-respecting man or person would not act the way the God of the Old Testament acts. Please worship me, or I'm going to strike you down. Why does God need people to worship him? Did he create people just so they would worship him? Is he insufficient in his own right? All right. Enough on that. Maybe he left. I don't see him in the chat. Got some new people showing up here. I'm thinking about ending the stream. Been going on for about 2 hours. A little more than 2 hours. It's been good though. I appreciate the super chats, especially, and that encourages me to do this some more. So thank you. Thank you, Mellow Mao and Steven, for your super chats. Maybe I'll give you one last minute to say anything if you want. Otherwise, I think I'm going to wrap up the stream. Thanks for all the hearts. See lots of hearts going up. All right, we got some comments here coming in the chat. I'm not sure are good comments. Do I need to delete or block anyone here? Delete any comments or block anybody? Sometimes I get trolls or racists showing up here, but I don't have time to read everything during the stream. But usually I'll look it up. I'll read it later. Mellow Mouse says, good stream, Dan. Keep it up on the TikTok debates. Thank you. I appreciate that. I might even do another TikTok stream today. I'm not sure yet. But anyways, it was good to come back here and do a live stream on YouTube. And these super chats encourage me to do that some more. So thank you. I'm not sure when I'll do another live stream on YouTube, but I encourage you all to subscribe, and then whenever I do a live stream, you'll more likely get a notification, especially if you click that bell. And you can follow me on TikTok as well. Dan Norton 11 on TikTok. So I guess I will leave it there. See, somebody just tagged me. All right, well, if this weren't the end of the show, maybe I'd talk more about that. Oh, somebody else tried to call in to Zoom. I saw somebody. Oh, there's 2 people now in the waiting room. Janusz was one. Is there a way to look at this without showing on the screen? Oh, I guess, yeah, I know a way to do it. I can just close this, hide this. Yeah, now I can look at it without showing the names of who's up there. Oh, it's, oh, that's Mellow Mao. Okay, and call in user 2. All right. Well, I will take Mellow Mao's, at least shortly. I just noticed him there right now. I have no idea who call-in user 2 is. But let me do at least a short call with Mellow Mao. Hello? Oh, he's connecting. Still connecting. Hello? Hey, Thank you for the super chat.
I was typing away, triggered quite a few thoughts. I haven't thought about utilitarianism in a while. So thank you for taking my call. I could obviously tell you're trying to wrap up. So, I always have a topic or two where I'd like your counsel or advice, but, I could just save it for another time, unless you feel eager to opening up a topic with me.
Well, we can do a few minutes, and
Okay,
maybe
then.
we can do a fuller call another time. But yeah, we can do at least a few minutes right now.
Well, thank you. Thank you for making time for me. Then in that case, I'll just linger a bit on the thoughts that were coming to mind for me for that call you had with the utilitarian who
Okay.
uh I actually forgot his name, unfortunately,
I think it
but
was Will or William.
I think that's right. It was Will. And I think I just realized something that I wanted to run by you. If you accept my definition of utilitarianism as those three premises, consequentialism, the goal being maximizing the aggregation of utilities, or the common good, it's also often called, and premise three, maximizing pleasure. I think that second premise is where there are some substantial differences with objectivism. I did understand your caveats, by the way. Objectivism has as a premise egoism, and that's where you would derive that personal utility, maximizing personal happiness is the goal. There really is no direct way to get the common good or maximizing the aggregation of utilities from the premise of egoism, which I think is good. I think it's conceptually sound. But what was new for me today is I'm now realizing that uh, um, objectivism provides quite a few reasons to be skeptical of the common good. And I'm thinking that using objectivist epistemology, we could try to access the common good either through reason or through faith. And I'm trying to think of a reasonable way to access the common good by deriving it as a concept, like how would I perceive the common good in action? How would I perceive moments of it? How would I integrate them into a coherent common good? And I'm having a hard time finding a pathway to that. I think it's pretty difficult and perhaps impossible to reasonably, rationally integrate some kind of common good. And therefore, I would conclude that a lot of utilitarians access it through faith or maybe like a sloppy notion of the common good. Like it's not a rational notion, it's like a projected faith based notion of it. And I think that would match my experience of listening to utilitarian arguments. So I want to ask you your thoughts on that. Does that make sense? Does that sound recognizable to you that the common good is probably not a rational concept, it's more of a faith based concept? Does that sound how you see it?
Well, the way utilitarians use it, I suspect that's right. I don't think there is a rational way to interpret that in a utilitarian framework. Now, in an egoist framework, I think you can't have an idea of a common good, but um, that's only because it's founded on the good of individuals. Like we can talk about what's good for America as a nation, what's in the nation's self interest, recognizing that the nation is just composed of individuals. So, like, what's good for me and what's good for you is to be free, for one thing. That's part of being good for any individual. And so, it would be good for us, for instance, it would be good for America to go to war with Iran because they threaten the interests of the individuals in America. They chant death to America, and they want to. They take our embassy people hostage and fund proxy groups that kill American soldiers. So I think you can say it's in the interest of the nation. It's a kind of common good for Americans that we get rid of hostile regimes But that's, you can only make sense of that conception of a common good because you have a notion of individual good prior to that, in terms of which you understand the common good. But you can't just start with the common good apart from any individuals, and try to make sense of that notion. I think that's where it's plausible to think, well, it's kind of based on faith or arbitrary ideas, or you just have some bureaucrats who claim to be speaking for everyone and say this is the common good, where it's really just their own personal good, and they claim to be the spokesman for the nation at large. I think that phenomenon happens sometimes. So
Yeah, I agree with that. Does it make sense to consider the common good as both a stolen concept and an anti-concept? And just to check my understanding of these terms, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but stolen concept would be, as you argued, a common good would be based on individual people's experiences of pleasure. So, how could you access a common good but deny an individual egoic good? You have to first accept personal egoic interests, as you have to accept their existence before you can derive a common good. And it seems like some socialists or communists will not, right? They'll deny it. They'll say like you should just, you know, accept your poor treatment in favor of the common good. So it's kind of a stolen concept. They're skipping a step, and perhaps an anti-concept too, because maybe people, bureaucrats who claim access to the common good, are trying to use it to discourage people from asserting their rights to their personal pleasure. So maybe it's like an anti-concept, right? It kind of obliterates the space for that. So does that make sense? Would you buy that it's the common good is basically both a stolen concept and an anti-concept?
I think it's at least one of those. The way that utilitarians use it, or the way many politicians use it when they speak about the common good, I think it's an invalid concept. Exactly what type of invalid concept is it? Is it a stolen concept? Is it an anti-concept? I would need to think about it some more to get into that level of nuance about it. But I do think it's an invalid concept the way it's commonly used by politicians. I don't think it has to be like you could use it in a valid way, as I was indicated. Like you could talk about what's good for America, where America is not an individual, but it's composed of individuals. So if you're using that concept from an egoistic standpoint, then I think it could be valid, but that's not how it's often used. Um, so it's just important to distinguish, how is someone using that. So like if Social Security, they say, well, it's for the or welfare, it's for the common good, that or public education, it's good for society that we have a educated populace. Okay, but is it good for me if I'm coerced to fund somebody else's education or somebody else's food stamps? I don't think it is. I think it's bad for me. But some bureaucrat or a majority, a mob, wants to overrule me and say no. Despite what you think, we get to tell you what's good for the whole, for society. We are the arbiters of what is in the common good, and your personal opinion be damned. That's just mob rule, and that's the end of individual rights, and that's a society descending into unlimited mob rule and tyranny.
Yeah, just the way you express that, I'm reminded of a call you had in one of your TikTok debates. Gosh, maybe like three streams ago. You made the rare choice of uh, having two guys. You were basically debating two guys, and one of them was a huge TikToker. He must have had like 1 million followers. I mean, it wasn't 1 million, but hopefully this rings a bell. But you brought on two leftists, and they were both very confidently defending leftist politics, um, in face of you defending objectivist politics. And I remember them describing like environmentalism is this way. Like there's a common good and like the individual be damned. Like if your use of your property hurts collectivist environmental goals, then like too bad, we're going to take your property, or we're going to tell you what to do on your property.
I think I know that. I'm guessing this is the July 4th call I get because that guy had over 100,000 followers, and um, he was a leftist, and there was another guy who was also a leftist. I don't remember that particular point coming up about environmentalism, um, but yeah, I guess that's another way that one could abuse the notion of good, and there it's broadened beyond just people. Now we're talking about like what's good for rocks and dirt, as if they had something good. Whereas I think a pro-human framework, which you see in Alex Epstein's work on environmental issues, is um, when you're talking about environmental issues, what we want is an environment that is good for human beings, not that is just good in itself. I don't think there's any sense to that notion. Um, and it's not even conscious for one thing. Rocks and like clean air and clean water, yeah, that's good for human beings, right? Um, so there are reasons to be
Yeah.
concerned about the environment, but the valid reasons to be concerned are reasons that are self-interested, that actually impact human beings. So there's still
Yeah.
a egoist perspective there.
Yeah, I'm really starting to notice the, I'd say, Ayn Rand's works and Leonard Peikoff's works have a very tight connection between something is valuable if it's valuable for some person, and probably me. I would evaluate it in context of me, and they're very in their writings. They have a very tight connection of like you wouldn't pursue something unless it benefited some conscious person, but I'm starting to hear in especially the calls you have of leftists a very loose notion of value, like what you said there, like clean rocks are valuable, and there's a very loose notion of like it just is right that clean rocks is a good idea, and sometimes you will push them a little bit, like for whom, like for the owner of those rocks, maybe if those are like diamonds, they probably want those diamonds to be very taken care of, or if it's like their pet rock. But I do hear a lot of the leftists who debate have a very loose notion of value. It kind of reminds me of, for some reason, I get this mental image of like, imagine a surge protector, like an electrical surge protector that you can plug into the wall, and you can plug things into the surge protector. But it wouldn't make any sense to plug a surge protector into itself. There's logically no electricity flowing, so it wouldn't make sense to plug a surge protector into itself. That would just defeat its purpose. It would be useless. But I detect a similar rhetorical move when you talk to some leftists, like clean air and water is just good, and there's a very circular notion, and you have to tease them to think about like because of the people who live there, like to them it's useful in some way, it benefits their experience in some way, and if for whatever reason cleaning rocks was so expensive that it came at the expense of those people's lives, then now it would be bad. It would be irrational to take clean air and clean water as a primary good. So just another observation I was having.
All right. Well, I do appreciate you coming up here. I want to wrap it up, but thanks again for your call and your super chats and your other chats. And yeah,
Of course, it was nice seeing you on YouTube again. Your TikTok debates go great. It's enjoyable to watch them. So thank you for bringing me up for a couple of minutes, Dan. Looking forward to seeing your next stream where I probably will ask you some more substantial questions. But thank you for letting me on for a couple of minutes. I enjoyed your stream today.
sure thing. All right. Bye bye.
Have a good one.
Okay. So that's going to be the last call of the day, and I appreciate everyone being here and watching. And to everyone who is watching this after the fact, thank you as well. I appreciate any likes on the video and subscribes, shares, follows, comments, etc. And let's do it again sometime. Okay. Have a good night, everyone. Where's my closeout screen? A little rusty here. Here we go. Have a good night. Bye bye.